Hi there. This week I'm with Dr. Vic. Dr. Vic is actually a pediatric and family wellness practitioner and chiropractor. So you're gonna be able to reach him and find him on the multiple websites and links that he provided in the description of the podcast episode description down below. In the meantime, I would recommend you to share the podcast, let the podcast known to people, and have as many people subscribe to the podcast on many platforms that they have access to. So Google Podcasts, iTunes, and so on. Finally, I hope you guys are doing well. Like confinement here is, it's a roller coaster of emotions, and I can't wait for people to cheer up, hug, and meet again. So without further ado, is Dr. Vic. Thanks. Hi, Vic. How you doing?
I am doing amazing. Alex, how's everything coming along?
You know what? Like we just talked about this, being quarantined is not too good for my mental state, but I'm going to get through this, but it is, it is quite a ride right now. It's something else. How about you? How are you dealing through this?
I always believe that everything always happens for a reason, right? I've seen it in my life. I coach people. I've seen it in their lives. And I always feel like there's always going to be good out of something. You can call me an optimistic or whatever, whatever your label you want to put on there, but it's always something that I see is going to come good out of this. May it be with myself, relationship with myself, how I view things, or my business or the world, or you name it. And so that's my perspective, even though we can get into like the dark stuff and seeing where we're at, are we ever going to get out of here? It's like, okay, who do I have to become more of as we go through that journey?
Yeah. And at the same time, there are plenty of things which we can see as, like super optimistic and positive. At the same time, minute by minute, it's a conscious effort to look for it. Sometimes it's just like, okay, now I must, in French right now, that's pretty much like the motto that, like the government and, all of our publicity right now is saying, ça va bien aller, which means like everything's going to be good, so it's like a rainbow and it says everything's going to be good. And so they just plaster everywhere with it. And, there is something about, you need to do like a conscious effort and saying, okay, where is it going to be good? And let me find it. And as you said, within myself, in me and outside, and we just talked about this, we're going to get to this, but, you have you're running a business and, you're probably feeling it. So, as I do every week, let's start this by pretty much leaving you the road open to tell me, where do we begin this? The upbringing, the family tree, where do we begin this?
Love it. I'm born and raised in a suburb of Chicago called Melrose Park. Growing up, it was an Italian community, Italian, a lot of Italian Americans there and Italians from Italy. I am a first generation Italian. So it was fun. I loved growing up in the neighborhood. There was so much connection and just family, and everything was about the family. It's the whole, as they say in The Godfather, it's true in an Italian culture. And it was one of those things where, you take for granted as you get older, because it was annoying at times. It was like, especially I got to become a teenager, where like every week I got to go by grandpa and grandma on Sundays for dinner. I mean, it's a whole day event. It's not like it's an hour or two. And but it was great because it teaches you the principles of life, right? And that's what one of the big things I gained out of that is what really matters at the end of the day. It's your family. At the end of the day, it's your family. And I've had things along the way teach me that, but it was one of those things where, like, I always said when my birthday always came, I always say I thank the people who are part of my life to celebrate it with me, because actually you make it meaningful.
Siblings, brothers and sisters?
I have one sister.
And so, I mean, I immediately can identify to the, like close knitting of it, like my parents were always like that. And, when you've lived it, you want to recreate it as much as possible. Like I try to be as close to my father and as close to, like everyone that's even, like I would even expand this to people that I consider family. And that doesn't mean that it's a cousin or a brother. Like if I consider you family, I think that what my parent inspired me is that when you're close to someone, when you're that close to someone, you can consider them family and pretty much do the same thing. Like so, in terms of like how tight you can be with people.
I love that how you brought that up. It's the same way for me. It's one of those things. If somebody's like really, really close to me, you're my family. You're part of my circle.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a friend, or things along that nature.
Yeah. And so what kind of kid were you?
What was that again? I apologize. It
No
went
problem.
out for a second.
What kind of kid were you? What's what's your upbringing like? Apart from like the closeness of the family.
So being the youngest, I was very big into sports. Sports was huge in our life. It was something that it was part of our life. We just played, and so sports taught me a lot of things. Sports brought a lot of life lessons that I may have not gotten in the family unit, even though I was around out of the family all the time. But it was one of those things that it was sports were to teach me life, but then they also helped me escape from my issues too, because I can be able to get away from stuff. And that's the beauty and the curse of, or the blessing and the curse of family. There's amazing things that come from it, but then there's another side of it that isn't so great.
Can you elaborate a bit on that, Vic? If you can.
It's like you think about it. Like I'm trying to go back. Like your problem was never, if you had an issue or something came up in life. Maybe I don't know. It could be school related. It could be something happened with
heartbroken,
finances.
For the first girlfriend.
Yeah, right. Or oh my God, I'm so excited to have my first girlfriend. The first kiss or the first right. Depending where and how that goes, it would be sometimes they would embarrass you more, right?
Yeah.
So it's the beauty of having the family, which you have people to share it with, but then they give you grief or opinions or this or so you get that dynamic. And so growing up for me, I didn't have tools to understand that. It would be frustrated, like, why are nobody listening to me? I'm trying to explain myself, and even though I may go against everybody, I wanted to be heard. And so sometimes that can kind of deter your beliefs and kind of put you into certain sections that the family kind of goes down.
Especially when you get in your teens. Like my mom would call her sister systematically. Systematically. Like so anything that would happen, like the first heartbreak, first French kiss, whatever, she would call my fucking aunt, and like, you don't know now, it would drive me nuts. Anyways, you just probably PTSDing on you.
Now you're bringing up a memory. I remember I was 14, no, maybe 15. And I had a girl she gave me a hickey on my neck. And I was going to my grandfather and my grandparents' house. It was 2 days later, and it was big. I couldn't cover it up. And so I'm going there, and I knew when I sat by my grandfather, I had angled away and all that. And I'm like, he can't see this. He is going to humiliate me. Oh my goodness, I'm never going to hear the end of it. And then he told me, he goes, you may think I'm stupid, but I already seen it I already know what you have on your neck. And I was like, dang it. And so then you have to deal with the emotion, the humiliation from it. And of course they don't make it easy on you, and then they lecture you. So, I mean, beautiful stuff. I appreciate the man. But it was just one of those type of things. You're like, how can I just be okay? Be happy for me. I didn't even know that, I didn't even know it was there.
Yeah. And it's a time where we just don't know shit. Like, so, like it is. And, like you can't learn your lesson by any other means by you experiencing it, like, so even when the elders, being your parents, your grandparents, whoever, try to teach you, you're so insecure that like you don't want to hear about it. You want to experience yourself, and I mean, ickies are like a good one because like it was just like my mom would say that like only sloppy people got this. Like I was like, oh, leave me alone. You're like, it felt good when I got it. Yeah, good memories, good memories. And so you talked about sports. Were you was it like a family thing? Your parents were into sports, or it was just like for you a way to I wouldn't say escape in the pejorative way, but like a kind of a way of building your social skills and all that?
Yeah. My dad played a lot of sports growing up. He was in tennis. He was in soccer. He was in, what else did he play? He was a gymnast, a very well-known gymnast in high school, and so forth. So he was very active. My mom was more, and she didn't get that much of a childhood growing up. She played a little softball, but for her growing up, she had to work in the restaurant. That was the family thing back then for her. So, but that, and then all my friends played sports. So like everybody, because we're an Italian community, so we're all playing basketball, we're all playing football. I never played organized football with like all the helmets and stuff and the gear. I would play tackle football with my friends.
Yep.
But that was the thing. So it was all about just being active and playing sports growing up as much as we could.
And academically, were you doing good?
For the most part, I was like a B student, B minus,
Yep.
but no, I would do good for it. Especially when I got into high school, then I started, I don't know, getting better with my GPA and stuff. But yeah, I was good at specifically math and science. Those were my two subjects I loved the most when I was in school.
The other thing I need to ask you is, what was your relation with authority in general? Like there's like two aspects to this. Like there's our parents, and I ask you that question because, well, obviously I told you before, like starting the recording, that I pretty much don't know where I'm going. So like because of that, like I'm always like I'm always just fascinated by like the exploration of like people's life story, but I ask that because like I meet a lot of folks that like had like drug issues and alcohol issues, and like the relationship with authority is interesting because like if it's not being called or labeled anti-conformist, which I was, and a lot of guests that I had were, there's also the first relation is the one with your parent, which sometimes is fantastic, and then comes the outside authority, which is like teachers and coaches and so on, which becomes kind of like this becomes messy, and or the other way around, like you like the rigor of like the teacher and the coach is fantastic to your kind of well-being, while like your parents' negligence like makes you kind of a like a free bird, and not in the good sense. So yeah, I mean, like, what was your relation with authority in general?
I love it. Great question. Yeah, I think for me, growing up, my parents, first you had to respect them, couldn't talk back to them, couldn't anything with them. It's just, if I did, I was getting back then. I
It was
was
a
from an
smack.
Italian. Yeah, I got the smack. My mother hates me saying this. I say it publicly. I don't mind. I had 18 wooden spoons beaten over me,
Yep.
broken that is. But I will say I deserved probably the majority of them.
Oh,
I wasn't the
and I got my share of smack, Vic. Like I got my share of smack, and like I would say that most of them, I would have given that smack. So.
That's how it was. I think about it now. Eventually I'm going to have kids with my wife, and I always think like I think about how I was, and I'm just like, Ma, you do what you had to do. I appreciate it, because it taught me a lot. But the other thing too so I had, respect your grandparents. You don't disrespect, you don't get out of line, you stay. And they were very good with getting that enforced into you. But the other side too is they also taught me to respect your strangers. Right, you respect your family members or friends. You respect them. You say hi. You got to give them a kiss, or for a woman you give a hug. Shake a man's hand and look him in the eye. It was like very regiment that way. So so I respected people. But the thing was, I think I was suppressed until I got into my then I started looking, starting my own self-discovery,
Yep.
trying to understand what the world's like. I grew up in Italian Catholic. It was religion that's what kind of propelled me that way, because I was never, in it's not like I just was an Italian Catholic and I just knew. I read the Bible twice by the time I was a senior in high school. I was a Eucharistist minister. I was very like religious in the sense of the Catholic Church and everything. But there came a point where I was, 14, 15, things aren't starting to make sense anymore. I'm starting to challenge the stories. I want to know deeper stuff. And as I got higher into, senior year in high school, I started to have more questions that weren't getting answered. And then it just wasn't, or it wasn't making sense to me. And I started doing a lot. I wanted to start like doing some soul seeking. So I remember, so my senior year, I ended up, when I graduated, I was going to go to college. I chose to go to Arizona State. Now I'm 36. So 18 years ago, from my town, little town, nobody really went away to school. It wasn't popular back then.
Yep.
But for me, I needed to get out of the system for some reason. And when I say system, I was very involved with my family. So a lot of their belief systems were, not that they're forced upon you. It just happens. It's like osmosis. You're just going to take them on. And it's all part of the plan. But then I had, and all these other things. And I was just like, some of these things I don't agree with. I just don't agree with these things. And it wasn't until I went to Arizona State, that's when I finally was away from the family unit, and I had to start to discover myself. And that took a long journey. But that's when I say, authority, how am I with authority? I'm in the health field. So I'll tell you, from the medical side, I'm not anti-medicine or anything like that at all. They have a place where they belong, but I challenge the system. I'm all about challenging things. Our politicians challenge what they say. I tell my own patients to challenge me. Like, don't take everything I say as truth.
Yeah.
I say something, take it as a grain of salt, go do your own research. If you need support, if you need anything from me, I will share. If you want both sides, I'll share both sides if we're discussing something.
Yeah.
I'm all about information and challenging, just like with everything with the coronavirus. I encourage people to like challenge what they're saying, like listen to what they're saying and then challenge it like it's not truth until you find the truth with it. Because if we just listen and be spoon-fed stuff, then where's the thinking? There's no critical thinking. You're not making an analysis. And so I think that's where like all these things, like I'm getting like this, I think it came from growing up in a community where I had parents who I didn't get to say. I couldn't, like, if I wanted something, I couldn't get it at that moment. Not saying that my parents didn't give me what I want. They did. They were very loving childhood and everything. But like when I was 16, I was so excited to get my driver's license, right? And my dad made me wait 3 months before I can get it.
Yeah.
He could have took me any time, but that's just how it was. You're not going to get it when you want it. You get it when you're going to get it.
And you had to deserve it. You had to deserve it.
Oh, big time. Oh, It was big time for that. But there's so much, I look back now and I am so blessed with those lessons. It wasn't fun back then. It's not like I was all excited, I got to wait 3 more months for this. I got to wait for this. That causes things that in my life, maybe I'm not going to get this because of XYZ, that programming. But there's also the other side that things may not come when I want them to come, even though I have the edge. Like I used to be more like, this is what I want, I'm going after it, and that's it. It's happening.
Yeah.
Because no one could tell me no, right? There's that authoritative thing again. But then there's the other side where it's just like, hey, you know what? It'll come when it comes. I'm good with this. I've already conditioned myself for that, so I'm ready to go, and I can handle that if that's the case.
And it's funny because we're not in a patience era right now. So and especially during these times, it is such a shock, for everyone. And I'm part of the, the people that are shocked about this, we're not in a patience era, people are instant click, one click buy, ship the same day and get it tomorrow. It is, we're not, to similar experience younger, that you describe, in terms of deserving and, shopping for a Christmas gift for months, and getting that little photo in the catalog and placing it, and letting your parents know, that's what I'm expecting this, I'm waiting for this, but it was a waiting and a deserving game that was quite interesting because, you always had that little threat hanging over your head that, like if you mess around, like you may not get it, and you may, but right now it's pretty much like point and click. You want something, got it. It's shipped, delivered. And, like it's instant, like it's crazy. You're right. Like it's crazy where probably that last generation, like I'm 45 and it was pretty much the last generation that had that, like that we waited
weeks, right?
Weeks and months,
I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. And so, so where did, like in what field did you decided to go in terms of your study?
Getting into chiropractic.
Well, you said that you moved to Arizona. So,
oh yeah. So when I was going to Arizona, I chose Arizona State because they were like one of the top computer science schools at the time.
Yep.
And computers are something I was fascinated about. I've been exposed to them at a young age. One of my dads had a friend who he'd build a computer for us to have. And so I would open it up and look at the old floppy disk and how the hardwire, I was just amazed by that. And so then I got into high school and I started dabbling with like putting computers together because I was just like, oh, this is easy. It's just simple, put some things together. There's all kind of coded in a way. I was just fascinated with computers, wanted to learn. So I was like, okay, how do I become someone of this who can work with computers and so forth? What I didn't realize, that was my dad talking in my head, because my dad believed computers is the future, which he was right, totally right in what he said. And he was like, get into computers. That's where you can make money and you'll be very successful with it. And so I was like, okay, because I've changed my career, like my decisions, junior year to senior year in high school, I could probably at least 10 times, between a chef, a lawyer, accountant, all these different things. So I got into computers, and then all of a sudden I was going to Arizona State, but then got there, started doing programming, and I was just like, this isn't fun. Like for me to sit in front of a computer for hours to make a simple bank account where savings and deposits and all that, to do the program behind it, I was like, I can't see myself doing this. So I started switching majors and looking at different computer technology, like computer technology, information tech, all these different ones. And I just chose, I think it was one of the less programming classes. And I was like, if I got to go through 4, I'll go through 4. But there came a point where everything was leading up, because it was all like, again, everything happens for a reason. Well, why was I having so many struggles with this? Why was I hitting a wall? And I was getting mad, and I was like, you know what? It is what it is. Let's see what I can possibly do. But then another wall hit, because when I was going back home for the summer break, I was not feeling good since I moved away symptom wise. I started having sinuses, or I had it already, but like everyday congestion, digestive issues, all these different health things. And so, long story short, I was talking to my mom, like, hey, I think I have a blood disorder. This is not looking good. It's getting worse. I have low energy. I don't sleep well.
You nailed it down to a blood disorder, like almost right away.
Well, I thought I had it, because I was like, I have some blood, because it was too many systems. It was like my digestion. I was getting headaches. I couldn't look in like light would bother me. I would have an upset, bloated stomach all the time. I had yellowing of the skin. I had acne on my back. Never had acne ever. Cold sores every week in my mouth, once a week in my mouth. I'm like, I don't know what this is. And I'm not I was like, I'm not a doctor, but I think I have some sort of blood disorder, because how is it that all these things are happening? This has got to be something severe. And the internet wasn't, the internet was out, but it wasn't what we have today.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, let's go, whatever I have to do. So she's like, when you get back, we'll get it. And it took about a month for me to get an appointment. And then this is a couple of days before, my mom's like, hey, why don't you go see Dr. Frank? Now, Dr. Frank was my chiropractor when I was about 10 years old to about 11 and a half. And she's like, I'm like, can he help me? What do you think? And she's like, go see him. Let's see what he has to say first. And then if you want, then you can go to the medical doctor. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go. And he kind of did a double take when he saw me. And, but that's where my chiropractic journey started. And it was because he kind of showed me and says, hey, you got about 2.5 months at home. We'll get you out of your symptoms, but you're going to have to go to chiropractic care for the rest of your life. I had scoliosis and some other things. And it was one of those things where I was like, okay, whatever I got to do. And so I decided at that moment, I was so fascinated. By the time I was going back to school, he was like, I felt I got back to being me. Now, one piece of the story I didn't tell you is I was playing rugby for Arizona State. It was a club team, but it's very vigorous exercises. For the whole year of doing it, I wasn't in the best shape of my life. Now I'm lifting more weight than I ever had. I'm exercising. I could run about a 5.5 minute mile at that time, and yet I wasn't showing the physical side of it. And what blew me away was within 4 months of care, all of a sudden I was in the best shape of my life. And it blew me. I was just like, I can't believe it. All my symptoms are gone and I'm in the best shape of my life physically. I was like, there's more to this that I can understand. And I want to learn this. This is like helping people, making a big difference. And that's kind of how I got into from computers into chiropractic.
And so, bottom line is that by physical manipulation, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but by physical manipulation, it obviously probably wasn't a blood thing.
No, yeah. I mean, we call it in chiropractic an adjustment, but it's one of those things where making the change, it helped with my body to heal again, and it was healing itself. And we all have that design. I mean, and even in
Yep.
our genes want to be healthy. That's what their main design is. What they want to do.
Yep.
And so from that journey and seeing how that all worked, I was just unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. Like I'm like, he's doing what again? I think I can. I appreciate the words I remember because I'm like, he just does what to my neck and this and it's going to help me. I'm like, I don't know how that's going to work, but hey, if this is, I'm gonna give it a shot because it's my
Yep.
health. I trust the guy, my mom, and I trust him because my mother trusted him. So I was like, and she's been going to him now for 30, well, she's been under care for 35, 36 years. But it was one of those things where I'm like, she's been with him for a very long time. Obviously, he helped her. I trust her. Let's see what happens.
And so you go back to Arizona and decide that you call it quit there?
Yeah, what I did is I switched my major to business. And then I got everything arranged. And so I finished the semester there. And then I headed back home and I finished up. I went to, I did a one semester at a small college, community college. And then the rest I did at the University of Illinois at Chicago. But I went there. Of course, they wouldn't let me take more credits because I was trying to get done with college faster. Here comes just the overachiever or like to do things just whatever. And I was going full time at UIC and I was going full time at the community college just to get done as quick as I could. So it was like 26 credit hours or something. Or no, yeah, 26 plus credit hours. Crazy.
Wow.
I did it for 3 semesters straight. And but again, people thought it was nuts. And I'm like, it works out. I had a job working at the college to where I basically only worked half my time and the other half I studied and did all that stuff. So I was able, like, because people would be like, how are you working 30 hours a week? How are you going to do all this? And then you play baseball on the weekends. Where do you find the time? I was like, well, 15 to 20 of those hours per week is I can get my homework, my notes, and everything done at work. So I was like, so I'm getting paid pretty much to do homework. I go, you can't beat this. And so I was like, this all worked out because of that.
And so, so when you finish business school, how does it work for chiropractic? How do you get, like you had to go to school to learn chiropractic?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah, it's so chiropractic school. They're about 3.5 years to 4 years. It just depends what school you go to and so forth. So yeah, I decided after I graduated college for my undergrad, then I was like, okay, I wasn't going to go to the school that was in Chicago. My chiropractor at the time, he graduated. He's like, do not go there. Whatever you do not go there. He's like, go somewhere warm. And I was like, well, let me know what school. And so he threw a couple out there like California, and then like up in Hayward area, California. And I was looking, okay, there's a school there. That'll be warmer weather. And then I looked at like how much rent would be. And I'm like, holy cow, that's a lot of money.
Yep.
Because that's going to be all borrowed. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. So I was looking to go to the school in Iowa. It's in Davenport, Iowa. And I could actually, they were going to allow me to miss the first week of school because I was trying to rush through. And like, my graduation date's not till here. You start the week before. They're like, we can get you in, we can exempt. And I was going to do it. And then at last minute, I'm like, you know what? No, I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to rush this. I'll wait till the fall to go. And that week, it was like a week before I had to send in my papers for the fall for the school in Iowa. Something told me to get out to Dallas and check out the other school. And I did. And I was like, I can be here. I can see myself here. I'm going to choose Dallas, Texas. And that's where I made the decision on the weekend. I told the other school I'm not going to go there. I decided a different one, got all my applications and done instantly. And they accepted me. And I was astute going. I went there in the fall, started in 2006.
And so you said about 4 years of college to go through that. When you come out of it, so you're certified chiropractor. How did it go? You had business and you had chiropracticing. So like, how did it go? What was what was your plan? And what was your plan? You wanted to open your own clinic?
Yeah, originally that's what I wanted to do. I had a big vision coming out of chiropractic school. I got to know a lot of powerful people. Not powerful. Let me take that back. It's not the word. It's more they were just influential and they were leaders of the profession. And being around them and learning about life, and again, right, challenging that belief system I grew up with.
Yep.
How life should be. Like everyone, like being, growing up in my community, it was one of the things you don't trust anybody. Never trust anybody. And you always have to. People always have an alternative motive, and it was just very common in where we grew up, and so you saw it all the time. So
my father raised me on nothing's free.
Yes,
it's crazy.
Nothing's free. Yep, nothing's free.
My father, if like a friend, like a school friend would give me a pen or a pencil or whatever, fuck, like small thing, I would bring it back from school and say, where do you get that? So, well, Pat gave that to me, it's like, nah, he didn't give it to you. You owe him now. I'm like, what do you mean you owe him? You owe him now. And so yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
and I think that's like the favor system, right? That's because my dad is all about, still to this day, all about favors.
Yep.
But it taught me how to negotiate. That's what I appreciate about that, right? Because somebody hears that and then it's like, yeah, but I saw what he was doing, and I learned how to negotiate. I remember I was in business school and we had a negotiation class, or it was part of the class that was something related to business, but we had a negotiation section, and basically we're going up and I'm negotiating a car deal with someone. I have points that I want to get, and they have points that are negatives for me or positives for them. I didn't know that. But I kind of put it together. And I negotiated, and at the end, I was like, man, hopefully I gave up some things, but I know I got what I really meant. Got the highest point values on this. Let's see what happens. And I had actually the lowest score in the class. And I was like, dang it, because I'm competitive, not in a negative way, like you just went out to beat them. I compete with myself, and I love somebody who's doing better or who's better than me, because then I'm like, I know where my next goal is. And it always gave me an outlook. So that's what I love about like sports, taught me that and so forth. So, so there comes that mindset where I'm seeing the scores coming up and I'm like, son of a gun, someone beat me by like 3,000 points. I was so mad. I was like, son of a gun, I can't believe this. Then I find out the lowest score is the best score because that means both party wins. And all of a sudden I'm like, holy cow, I got that right. I can't believe that. And it was kind of cool because again, favor systems, right? So there's always that beautiful side of things that you can see from it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you met inspiring people and people that are well known, either personalities or characters in your practice. What was the influence in terms of the path that you would draw yourself for your future?
Like the path I was creating, the vision I had. Yeah. So I remember sharing this. One of the president of our school at the time was named Dr. Fabrizio Mancini. Very well known in the chiropractic world, and he's very internationally known also. And it was one of the things where in trimester 2, so my school at the time was 3 years, a 3-year jam curriculum, and so we had 9 trimesters, and so my second trimester, one of my friends who was the former Jamaican hurdler in the '96 Olympics, people who came from athletics, they kind of knew the people in the school a little better. But long story short, he's like, the president really likes you. I got to meet him a few times already, talking to him, and he's like, he'll take you out to lunch. He wants to take you out to lunch. He goes, we'll make it happen. He only picks out certain people that he sees something in. I was like, okay, cool. Got a message from the secretary. All of a sudden, I got a lunch with him. And so he asked me a question in there, and it's very similar to what you were just asking, is what's your vision? He goes, what do you want for chiropractic, and what do you want to do for chiropractic and humanity. And I was like, man, let me tell you, I got a vision of helping people. I look at, helping to, here's how I want to do it. I'm going to hit it from the inside out. I want to make sure that, I'm going to come from a well-rounded place and, help really, save the world type of mentality.
Yep.
And so that was the kind of concept, but I had it in a way to where I wasn't, there was no stopping to where I want to go. I just got to get to each level. And so that's kind of how my vision was coming out of chiropractic school, is that I was like, okay, I'm ready to start my business. I had some opportunities come up. I turned them down to work for another chiro, the one chiro who I was originally going to. And so the path was, I wanted to share this vision. I wanted to see people get well. I wanted to go against the whoever you want to call them. The machine, the people are like, I always see in my head, I see it as people walking down a path. They don't know how they got there. They don't know what influenced them to be there. And it's down a path that's not their greatest light. It's not their well-being. They're kind of programmed in a sense to be a certain way. So that can come from health, eating right, your belief systems with that, moving right, your belief systems with that. Because there's a lot of I'm big into words. So like one of the things is like chiropractors are known as quacks a lot of the time. So people call.
And Vic, I just want to, just to be sure that, everyone understands, there are three kinds of manipulation, right? There's massage therapists, there's chiropractic practitioner, and and then there's the osteo, right? That's pretty much the three main field in body manipulation for better health. Let's say that way. Can you help us understand, the main difference and the main approach, or the origin of chiro versus the others?
Yeah. So chiropractic and osteopathy were very similar in many ways. It's more the approach of the philosophy of what they're working at and what they're working towards. Osteopathy believed in the circulation was the cause of disease. Chiropractors believe it's the nervous system that's the cause of disease. And when I say dis-ease, I mean dis-ease, which means the body's not working as ease as it was before. Long term, that does create disease and illness and so forth. So that's where, chiropractors, we're really more brain doctors. We just really focus on the brain, how the brain's wired. And we use the spine as a tool, the vertebrae in your spine as like a tool to activate or stimulate the neurology there to help improve the communication between the brain and the body.
You're still doing coding, Vic. You're still coding. You're just coding the spinal cord now.
Man, it is so true. It's funny when you say that. I have a couple programmers in my office as patients, and I love talking to them because I can talk about circuitry and stuff and tie that in how chiropractic is or how the brain is. And it's funny how their eyes will just like light up. They're like, oh my God, yeah, I get that. Oh, I see now what you're saying. And I'm just like, it's so cool that I understand that.
So chiro is nervous system and osteo is more of the blood vessels in the blood system.
Yeah, they believed in circulation. So there's some adjustments that chiropractors took from osteopathy in their techniques. But yeah, it was more about the circulation side of things and to get things moving along at that time.
And so getting back to what you just said, which is like some people consider chiro, you said quacks,
yeah.
Can you tell me why? I've heard Joe Rogan, for example, say that it's pretty much snake oil, and I've heard because of the origins of it. Where I don't know if he's right or where does he base that on. But just to sum it up, he says that the guy that was pretty much like a snake oil seller that invented chiropractic. So it. For me, it has always been, and I've consulted and had good care from chiro practitioners, big time. So it's tough. It's just that the biggest podcast in the world is hosted by someone that said those things. So I would love to hear from you. Where do you think it comes from? Saying those things, and then what's your opinion on it? Because I see I just touched. I just touched the right button, Vic. So
This is one of my passions. Health and mindset are my two biggest passions. No, I mean, when I heard that podcast, a lot of us in the chiropractic world were like livid by it because I'm like, this is such BS. Where's his science? Where's he getting his information, right? And all that stuff behind it, because it was one of those things where yeah, we were not upset by it. We're like, couldn't he interview one of the people that we can recommend? Some of the bigger guys who are researchers and scientists, who can break that down so elegantly and challenge anybody. You can challenge them on anything. They have some of these guys can spit out like exactly what study it came from, who were the authors, who wrote the study, how the study. I'm like fascinated by those guys. But yeah, again, I'm losing the question though. What was the question again?
No, it's just that, what's your, so my guess is that, like the origin story that
what it was.
That Rogan would spill wasn't quite what it is.
No. So the original story is D.D. Palmer was the founder of chiropractic. Before he got into or looking at chiropractic, he actually was a magnetic healer before that time. So he helped out a lot of people. He solved about 80% of his cases, give or take. But he couldn't get those last 10, 20%. And so it was one of those things like he started looking at the nervous system. And my background's in energy medicine. So I've studied things like Reiki. I'm a Reiki master and trainer. I've studied about maybe 5, 6 different energy modalities and healing and a variety of stuff. And what he found was that the nervous system was what controlled everything. And what ended up doing was when the first adjustment happened, which was by his janitor of the building, the guy lost his hearing. And he's like, hold on, I have something that may help you. You mind? I'll walk you through. So you evaluate him. He felt his spine. He makes an adjustment. Boom, his hearing's back. And it was one of those things that's where it kind of began. But he wasn't you can consider somebody who's like a Reiki master or someone who does energy healing. Back in the day, they would call him like a snake oil person, or that's woo woo stuff, and it's really out
a witch. A witch.
Yes, exactly, right. And so so some people may hold on to that mentality, just like quacks. People don't know where it comes from. It actually comes from the medical system. And they, 1963, they started a whole committee that was originally going to be against on chiropractors, but ended up being a committee. And they said that we can't say chiropractic; it's too specific and stuff. So they just said quackery in general. And so when someone's calling a chiropractor a quack, what they don't realize is that's something that was slander to be propaganded on chiropractors. And there was actually a lawsuit that took, I forgot, 12, 14 years or something that long to finally be shown that the medical system did ploy an attack on chiropractic and smeared false information and all that stuff.
I didn't even know that expression. That's so yeah. Okay. Like I told you before recording that I read as little as possible about my guests. There's a reason for that. I want to learn as we go. I saw that your practice as well does people's lives coaching, and you help people and changing their destiny or their life. Where does that come from?
That's my other passion. So it's my mom always told me growing up that if I put my mind to something, if I put my mind into it and I believe in it, it will happen, right? And she always said, put your mind to it, it'll happen. And so that was something that I always remember because she said it so many times. And it was, but I remember when I was 12 years old, I was talking, I don't know if it was to her or someone, but I said, I'm going to figure out this life thing. I'm going to figure out the game to life. There's rules to it. I'm going to figure this out. And I just said it, not nonchalant. But I meant it though. I was like, I want to figure this out. I want to know I want to know the tick of life, and I want to know it from all levels I can possibly can. And so that's where it all stemmed. And then from there, that's where it evolved to where I started getting into energy healing. I started studying quantum physics. I started studying neuro-linguistic programming and neurology and the neuroscience. And chiropractic helped me so massively because I studied the brain and everything and how the functions of the brain work. And so it was very easy to make connections and start connecting the dots of how life works. And of course, listening to a bunch of people like Tony Robbins and a bunch of other individuals, learning and
which
learning
is an
what they're
NLP.
saying.
He's amongst other things an NLP master, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the NLP community does not like him because he doesn't practice it like they do. He does it in his own version, which is funny.
But it's I mean, my wife is an NLP. She doesn't practice, but she's a bachelor. Like she did even her post. Yeah, she did her post. She just did it all. She took the professional side, not the life coaching side, but more the
Gotcha.
professional coaching side. So like I've heard of a few, like few things. Like it's there are many things in there which you just like you just mentioned, like there's hypnosis, there's like it can go super hard facted, or it could go really like more of, I wouldn't say esoteric, but like more of the, oh shit, like if I'm more grounded, it takes me out of my comfort zone. So you mentioned NLP. So my guess is that your curiosity plus adding up all of these things, you end up wanting to share that with others, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to learn it. I wanted to test it on myself and then start just testing and seeing, teaching and sharing whoever close friends I have and stuff, and just see, does this really work? Does it really happen? And, as I started to see, when I was 24, 25, one of my spiritual teachers always said, she's like, you have a lot of information and knowledge. You know a lot of things, and you're way too young to know a lot of things, all these things. And I was like, yeah, I know this. And she's like, but you lack experience. And that's where wisdom comes. And then when you put the two together, and I was like, no, I know this stuff. I got it. I understand universal laws because it was easy to conceptualize in my head, to understand it.
Yeah.
But then when it came to the experience side, it was fascinating because, 11 years later, 12 years later, I'm looking back, thankful for what you said, because it's like, it's the experiences of my life that's actually giving me more depth and understanding.
Yeah.
And so from all that and adding that all up, that's where I was like, now I can start teaching this. And I understand enough of it, especially when I got deeper into neurology for chiropractic. I was like, I get this. I can put something together. And that's how it kind of all started.
How do you converge the two of them?
For me, so in my office, my chiropractic office, one of the things I'll do, we use a technology called heart rate variability, which is basically looking at, how well you adapt to life, how well you handle changes, how well you're going to handle stress, how that's going to affect you. And then from there, whatever, the higher the HRV or heart rate variability, the healthier you are, the more you can handle changes and stress in life, and you're going to thrive through it. Where if it's the opposite end, that's you're not going to thrive. The body's going to protect more, which will lead to things way down the road of chronic illnesses and so forth. So we use that technology because it's a lifestyle assessment. Because the way to improve it, one is chiropractic care, second is exercise, third is nutrition, fourth is sleep, and the fifth is mindset. So we knew this in chiropractic because there's three things that cause a subluxation in your body, or a miscommunication is what we like to call it, in your nervous system. And we were trained this way, it was taught this way. It's thoughts, traumas, and toxins, right? So the thought part was always interesting because a lot of my teachers would talk about, hey, it's emotional and mental stressors are about 80% of the time, and the research was supporting that and so forth. And so that was always my peaked interest. And I was like, okay, how can I help people? So when it came to my chiropractic office, I help on the lifestyle side, but I'll know if other lifestyle factors are affecting them. And the one I always address the first time, and I've tested this throughout the 8 to 10 years I've been practicing, well, 10 years I've been practicing, is that if we can get to the mindset, I have an 80% chance of it helping me support them on their HRV. So I would look at things like, mindfulness practice, like meditation, breath work, journaling, gratitude practicing. And that's kind of where I started like practicing some of these concepts on the mindset, already before I had my other business on mindset and everything tied to that. And it just, as I started to see how that played a huge role, one of the things I learned is that, my patients eventually only saw me as a chiropractor. So if they wanted to come to me for chiropractic stuff, which chiropractic helps everything, but coming to that, they didn't want to hear Dr. Vic, the mindset guy. They didn't
Yeah.
want to hear, hey, I'm coming for this. Don't tell me my mindset and this pattern's creating that. And I would start to get a lot of resistance to a certain
Don't
degree.
coach me, fix
Huh?
me.
Yes, exactly.
Don't
Right.
coach me, fix me.
Yeah, not a lot of people want to be coached. So I do have a lot of patients that I do, but there's some people who have a mentality, hey, I want to be fixed. And I'm always like, oh yeah, we don't fix or treat anything. What do you mean we don't fix or treat anything? We'll get to that later. Let's find out more about you right now. But
Yep.
it's one of those things where, but yeah. So when I had those kind of those roadblocks, or just kind of every time, this urge inside of me kept coming, kept coming. And it was like, hey, this is another avenue. You got to write a book. It was one of my visions at 28 to write to be an author. It did not happen. I didn't become an author until 34. But it was one of the things where my this it was like a just a huge bubble inside me, and it just wanted to explode. And it was my urge to want to do mindset stuff. So that's kind of like was the behind the scenes to get me into doing all my mindset stuff. Where we have I do classes on it now. I've been doing coaching for over a year now. I have my own podcast on it, and I've written 2 books, both all relating to mindset.
So do they? So there's a bit of convergence, but at the same time, you have 2 distinct practice that you run in parallel, pretty much, right?
Yes, totally. And every once in a while, like right now, with everything going on with COVID, I blended it right now, just because my patients need a lot of help with the mindset side of stuff, which we've been sharing a ton of that. But then my community, they can get some of the health tips that I'm sharing with my patients that
Yeah.
they can have access to. So for right now, like our social media stuff and everything is all blended at the moment. But once this all kind of clears, who knows? We may, my health side, I may now look at because my background in nutrition is pretty extent where I may even do some online stuff for that too, because we're doing a lot of telehealth stuff at the moment, and it's just having me start to see in a different perspective.
What's the state of, like, great subject to bring, but like, what's the state of mind of people right now?
A lot of
What?
fear, a lot of stress, a lot of worry. The people I serve, I wouldn't say a lot of them are. I mean, they're more frustrated and angry, like they're done with this. Let's move forward. And some people are getting frustrated with what they're hearing from the media, or what they're freaking out from the media. So there's a lot of low vibration. There's a lot of it's palpable. You can feel it here. It's just a lot of like intenseness, and just and when they finally start to give a little bit of a break, and you can feel things kind of opening up and lifting, and then there's some news that comes out, and all of a sudden I can feel the fear again going on.
And so how do like, I don't want to spill the secret, like, but at the same time, what do you recommend? What do you
So
tell, like, you need to shut it off, like, you need to shut off, like, like, because it feels like it's, there's massive hypnosis taking place, like, you talked about the media, like, it feels like mass hypnosis, like, okay, everything's going to be good, stay home, don't move, like, there's like that, like, there's something, and I get the frustration and the angriness, like, and being fucking anger. Like, I get it, but at the same time, like, it's always about, like, I think I'm wise enough to be able to kind of catch myself going into those dark places and just like step back. I'm like, okay, relax. So like, everything's gonna be good. Take a moment to, like, as you said, like, pretty much a gratitude list, and, like, count your blessing, and, look at stuff that are better, and look at stuff that situation made me gain or win, or, like, add to my life, like, and then, okay, rely on this and count on this, on bank on this, like, and just, like, but I totally get how easy it is to spiral down, like, to just say, oh, well, fuck that. Like, that list is so thin and so short that, like, there's that list there that's much longer, that's pretty darker, much darker in terms of, like, so what do you, like, on pretty much like on a 1,000 feet level, what do you propose? Like, what do you say?
I love it. Great question. And this is something we addressed on both sides of my practice and everything since the beginning of March. And that is, first, what you want to do is, when you get fear, when you have worry, it activates a pathway on the side of it's right above your ear, part of your brain there, called the temporal lobe. Right. In the temporal lobe, there's a section of it called the amygdala, which is known as your fear, anxiety, and worry center. It's not where the brain totally feels all stress and worry, but it's the main center of it. And so what happens is, if you get in that place of fear or worry, you stimulate your your breathing starts to get shallow, eyes start to dilate. Just you get into this fear-based state. Now, when you fire this pathway once, okay, that's fine. When you're firing at 2, 3, 4, 8, 12, get the point, it just start to get higher and higher, and start to reinforce that pattern. you start to become more in this reactive state. And now, like you were saying, hypnosis, right? Why do you think the media says all media channels say the same words? You can go to any station you want; they're all
Yep.
saying the same words. There's a reason behind that. You can do the research. But long story short, you constantly hear things that whatever that word is, it's going to mean something to you. And then you're going to fire up these emotions. And what are you doing? You're repatterning. So it could be anger, it could be frustration, whatever it is. So what you want to do, when I usually advise from a mindset perspective, is first, how do you change the wiring? How can you short circuit and go the other way? We talk about programming, circuitry, all that fun jazz. So
Yep.
this is what it is, and what you're doing is, how can you turn that part of the brain off, which is what I call in my practice a gas pedal, or your sympathetics, this is the medical term. How do we shift that into a different mode, which is known as brake pedal or parasympathetic, which is the slowing down, the calming, the healing, the regenerative area? How do we make that switch, which is right here, prefrontal cortex or the frontal lobe? That's where the calming effect of the brain happens. Then where eventually, when you wire to that area, then it's also the body. And so there are things outside of chiropractic that you can do, and one of them I always recommend right off the bat is breath work, a breathing. Now, not just slow, long, or short breathing, something vigorous, something that's going to get you outside your comfort zone, and you really got to work on this. So, a technique I always recommend is by a guy named Wim Hof. He has the Wim Hof method breathing.
I was just about to say that. Wim Hof. Cold showers.
Yeah. Wim Hof
Wim
I
Hof.
love his technique. I love it. But
And
it's
this guy is
go
just
ahead.
phenomenal, crazy. I mean, like if you have a chance to, if you're listening to this and you don't know who Wim Hof is, it's WIMHOF, and this guy is just crazy. Go down that rabbit hole. You have time right now. Go down that rabbit hole of Wim Hof. This guy is just he shocks the scientific world with stuff that he does, and it's just craziness. Anyways, but I know exactly what you're referring to in terms of like that. It's active and it's quite active breathing techniques. There's nothing about this, like 3 up, 4 down, and like it's way more. It's an impulsive and it from the outside world it looks like a stressful breathing, but it's nothing. Like there's nothing of that nature in that breathing technique. So yeah.
No. And so what it does neurologically is you're going to stimulate a nerve called the vagus nerve, which is a major portion of the parasympathetics. And so when you stimulate, you start to all of a sudden change that pathway. And then also neurologically, when you breathe, you have something called the breathing pacemaker in the brainstem. So it's monitoring breath rate, and then it reacts from that. So that's why when you take a couple of deep breaths, all of a sudden you can feel a little calmer, because you're changing the breathing pacemaker of that area of the brain. And so that's why also the breath, when you do Wim Hof, you can get into like what yogis try to take 20, 30 years to get into, you can do through the breath and his work in a matter of just a couple of weeks.
Yep.
But that's one.
And
well, go ahead. I mean, that's one thing I'd recommend. Just so I don't miss the other one here. The other one I usually recommend is meditation. Now, for some people, that might drive you crazy. And I totally get it. And meditation comes in many forms. It could be yoga, it can be walking, it could be shaving, it can be, it's not the type where you're thinking of just sitting in a dark place and closing your eyes and not thinking. Good luck. That's never going to happen. You always have thoughts flying through your head. So it's up to 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day. So that's quite a lot if you think about it.
yep.
And so you're always going to have them. So, but the key thing is what meditation is focusing and connecting with yourself. And when you can get that and be more resilient to it, you don't pay attention to so much of the thoughts flying. They're still there, but they don't come and bother you as much. Why do I share that? Well, we know that activates and stimulates the prefrontal cortex, again, calming part of the brain, calms the body. But one of the, it's your executive center. It's what controls your impulse, and also helps with behavior and mood, and then all your executive centers and so forth. So when you can make that switch, now all of a sudden you don't get so caught up in the worry and fear. You listen to it, but it doesn't affect you. You're not reactive to things as much. Like there was a story of meditators, a group of 10 of them. They're master meditators, and they go to a restaurant. And what happens is all of a sudden some waiter drops all these dishes across the whole of the floor. The meditators go to look, they make sure they're okay, and they just went back to eating. Well, everyone started talking about it, gossiping it. Someone should be fired. All this reactiveness. And so you see the same situation, you just don't react. COVID-19 came, when everything started to shut down, my wife was looking at me like, why aren't you worried? I can't believe you're not worried. And I just looked and said, hey, so, again, something's good is going to come out of this, but let's really look at this from a different point of view. Let's walk down and see how severe this really could be, and let's look at let's look at all the options. And then when we have all the information, we know where we can be at every stage. And then you're just calm and collective. It's not that I didn't have any worries ever. I'd be lying if I said that. But it was one of those things where I'm like, well, there's only two options. There's two things I can choose. I can worry and freak out and XYZ, or I can make a choice and be like, you know what, this is what's going to happen. We're going to go this route. And we're going to look at every single plan, have an A, B, C, D, E plan, and just make sure that we're locked away for whatever, from the worst extremes to the most minimal.
Yeah. I mean, like it is, right now it's such a unique situation and such a unique moment in time that, there's pretty much not much else than stepping back from it, because if you're in the gist of it, I mean, no wonder where panic and fear comes into play right off the bat. It's such unknown, we're not used to that, that's as I said, it's not a patience era, and it's a control era as well. We need to control, and right now we're not controlling shit. So it's panicking. It is panicking.
No,
and I'm guilty as charged here. I wouldn't say a control freak, but I'm in charge. And so when you lose that, it becomes like, oh, wait, who's taking over my own, it is quite weird. It's a weird feeling. So, and again, it's facing the unknown that makes this more challenging. And my guess is that you must live it every day in terms of your own patience, where you discover the effect and the impact. And my guess is that in a few years, there's going to be PTSD from that. There's going to be through, there's going to be true people that are going to be, they're going to be that are going through now that are going to be affected for, a long, long time, that they're going to be, I wouldn't be surprised where there's going to be mention of PTSD from that crisis.
Oh yeah, I mean, and mental health just alone. I mean, humans are creatures of community and being together, and isolating, putting in shelter. I mean, my biggest concern, this is why we attacked right off the bat with like fear and mindset and all this, and we blended immediately, was because mental health is the one thing I'm really more concerned about. And so you can say the economy and all this, and that's, that economy is going to, take its tanks and hits and all that. But then there's also how much of mental health of people who don't go out, get into redundancy, right? We're in an inpatient era, we're patient era. And then also the other thing too is that, I lost my train of thought with this, but again, it's just coming back to, the mental health side of it, and just people there it was, people doing the same thing over and every single day. They need that distraction of something different. They need that distraction of going to watching the game, whatever sport that may be. They need that distraction from themselves, and they don't have that anymore. So now it's just, what do I do with all this time? Is this my life? And if you're not suited for that or ready for that or wired that way to support you, it can go down some dark roads.
Yeah. Vic, you talked about the front lobe that, it gets calmed down, and, that gets, finds this peace. I have to say that, a year ago, almost not to this day, but, last March of 2019, I started that podcast, and I pretty much repeat the same shit every episodes, but, I reach out to strangers. I initially started with friends and family and relatives, but eventually I reached out to strangers, which gracefully and openly accepted to be guests on this. And every time I was not only humbled, but just filled with such gratitude that people would accept a nobody's podcast that has because I'm so niche, I don't have the numbers of a Rogan or fuck, I wish, but but what I'm saying is that, like those are, like they're organic and slow growth, and like you reach out and you say, well, fingers crossed, like I hope that, like I'm gonna get, like people that, like besides my family, because I'm running thin here, like I've done a few, but I'm running thin, like it's gonna be done soon. A year and some weeks later, I find myself like filling my agenda of people that are willing to accept to join in, and you as well as all the 80 something others are my therapy. Like you guys are just helping me and going through any times, like being this special time, but like it's been a year, like, and I always, again, like I always share the same thing. Like originally, I'm a guy that comes from 12 stepping. Like I'm a 12 stepper myself. So, but I always come back to, like the origin and the genesis of it is, like a guy that was, like that was anxious to have a drink and was just like thirsty as hell, reaching out. He's in a hotel lobby, reaching out, freaking out, and finds that drunk doctor that says, I'm the last person you want to talk to. Like I'm a fucking waste, like of your time. And I'm a waste of the profession. And, like like, anyway, so like Mr. Dr. Bob wouldn't be, like the best reference at the time. And, Bill Watson, the guy was like the flashy, like stock broker and all that, like that was the one that was sitting in the hotel lobby. Just he called churches and couldn't find any priest that would meet with him, because it had initially had like a religious foundation from another group that I forget the name. Anyways. And so he reaches to Dr. Bob and said, no, you're precisely the guy that I need to go talk to. And they sit down and they spoke and talked for 8 hours. That's what a legend says, that, like they spoke and talked for 8 hours and drank a shit ton of coffee. And by the end of that 8 hours, realized that they weren't thirsty anymore and weren't for the past 8 hours. And hence began the AA organization. Two fella that shared the same pain, thirst of alcohol, that by sharing and talking and exchanging together lost their thirst. And 60, 70, 80 years later, like we're hundreds of millions that not only do for alcohol, but do for drugs, for food, for sex, and so on. Sharing with people such as you, Vic, like does pretty much the same thing for many parts of my brain. Like it does the same for, like when I spoke to Anne last week, like and when you take me out of my comfort zone, because, like there's some stuff that you describe here, like the energy healing for me is just like, oh shit. Okay. Are we going there? Like it is, like right? For me, it's just, I mean, like I'm a feet on the ground guy, like, and I love asking myself those questions. I love discovering and exploring those facets of life, because I've seen people saying it fucking saved my life and it freaking helped me, like, so. And so, yeah, like just like long story or long, like long talk short, and saying that, like, I thank you, Mr. Vic, to have accepted to be part of that adventure of mine. Like it's a journey, like for me, it's pretty much a personal journey of discovering people and discovering profession and discovering life story. And yours is now part of that old journey. And, like, I'm super grateful that you accepted to be part of that.
It was my pleasure. It was my honor to be on. I appreciate you for having me.
And the last thing I would ask you is, like, where can we find you, Dr. Vic?
Love it. Appreciate that question. Online is one of the easiest. You go to my website, empoweryourreality.com. You can check out and get connected with all that I'm up to. You subscribe to email if you want to keep up with me there. I'm on social media, Facebook at Dr. Vic Manzo, Instagram at Dr. Vic Manzo. I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm out there. Get connected. I have a podcast also if you want to check that out, but it's all connected on the website. But that's pretty much me. How you get the
What's your podcast name? The Mindful
Experiment.
Awesome. And just for every listeners, every link that Vic just mentioned are going to be attached to the description of the podcast, so you can find them there, as well as, like you said that you had 2 books. Their books are sold, or
they're out in the open. Yeah. Book number 1 is Rediscover Your Greatness. Number 2 is perfect for this timing, A Walk in the Dark.
Awesome. So, like both of the book links, as well as all of the links that Vic mentioned, are going to be are in the description of the episode. So go scroll this down and look for the links. And again, Vic, thanks a lot. Really appreciated your time, and wish you the best. I know those are hard times, especially for like physical contacts. But I know that I think you found a great path to making this, make everyone's and your own life better. So thanks again for your time, Vic.
Appreciate that, brother. Keep up the good work.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.